Howdy, and welcome to the Breakaway podcast. Breakaway is a Bible study recorded on the campus of Texas A&M. For more information on Breakaway, please visit breakawayministries.org. We hope you enjoy the message and stick around for more at the end.
Well, howdy. All right. Hey, it's great to see you guys. It's awesome to be here tonight. The third breakaway in 8 days. I love it. We had an awesome time at Parents Weekend. If you weren't here, we talked about getting engaged, which I thought was awesome. We heard stories later of people sitting with the parents of their girlfriend as I talked about the conversation between guys and their possible father-in-laws and how that was going to play out, and it was just super awkward, which was just amazing. You're welcome, and so glad we were able to do that for you, and it was a fun night. I thought it was cool. It was a good time. And then TA was here a week ago, and crushed it. It was amazing. But we've been journeying this semester through a series on dating, which is why I imagine there's so many of us here tonight. You're like, what? Oh yeah, we knew that. It's why we're here. We've been talking about dating, and we've been moving through these phases of life that the vast majority of you will move through in your 20s, being single, dating, engaged, and then married. And so we've moved from singleness to dating to being engaged, and the natural next move is to talk about marriage, and we're going to talk about marriage. But as we were looking at tonight, I realized I have two messages I want to give about marriage. One about it being the picture of Christ and his church from Ephesians 5, and then another message about the pursuit that a man and wife go on together. And as I was praying about that, thinking about that, I realized I gave a talk 2 years ago on the picture of marriage that God intends from Ephesians 5. And I'm not going to say it was like the best talk on Ephesians 5 ever, but I am going to say it's probably the best talk I can give on Ephesians 5, which is the Mount Everest of texts of God's intent for marriage. And so I thought tonight I could re-preach that, or we could just post it online again, which we're going to do, put it back out there, let you come around it this week, listen to that, Ephesians 5, God's picture of marriage, why he ordained it, and then we'll just pick up next week with more about marriage. And that would free up tonight to do something I've wanted to do from the beginning of the series, but was afraid we were going to run out of time, and that is answer your questions. Because here's the reality. We have been inundated with questions. Through every social media portal imaginable, you've been asking questions about singleness, about dating, about things like that. And I thought, I want to address those, but I'm not sure how we're going to do it. I'm not sure what format. And then I just realized this is our opportunity. This is our moment. And then I thought, I could sit up here and do it, but you're hearing a lot from me, which is great. But I think there would be strength in adding some voices. And so I thought we would have some couples answer your questions. So we're not asking you to give questions. We already got more than we'll have time to answer now from you guys. And we kind of aggregated and pulled them together into themes. And we'll cover as many as we can here. The rest we'll do on the podcast a little later. But I wanted to bring up some couples that we could do this together. So the first couple is me and my wife, Donna. So if you haven't met Donna, Stuart, welcome her up. Yeah. So here we are. And the other couple is none other than Jordan and Jeff Johnson, young people. Welcome them back to the stage. Unbelievable. The internet is already blowing up. We're about to hear from Jeff and Jordan Johnson.
Watch out.
And they're going to sing every answer, which is just unbelievable.
They promised.
You are too, right, Ben?
Yes, I am.
He's going to drop the heavy beat. On the
Yeah. I'll drop the beat. And so I'm excited about tonight. This is going to be, Lord willing, helpful and potentially wheels off. So as long as we know that's where all this could go. I thought the best way to do it would be to give you a little bit of a picture of our relationship. So I thought the way we'd start is give kind of like a 2-3 minute synopsis of our respective dating experiences in marriage. So it's not the full story. We don't have time for that. But it's part of the story. So we figured we'd let the Johnsons start and tell us your story.
We got like 30 minutes.
Gosh, how did y'all meet? Yeah, so ready to go.
Well, the brief version,
Very brief.
yes, is the spoiler alert is that we had a 10-year dating history. So we're going to give you the very brief.
Insert. Ooh.
Yes. Insert tears. We met actually leading worship. And we were, I was 19, I had just finished my freshman year at college. I was interning at a church in Texas. I'm from Florida, went to school in Florida, but I came out to Texas to this church to work for the summer, met Jeff. We were asked to lead worship together. It was a church plant, didn't have a full staff yet, so we led worship together a few times and got to be really great friends. And we're really great friends for about a year. And then things started getting questionable. We're like, okay, so what are we? Are we friends? Are we not? But we didn't talk about it. So Jeff started thinking that we were dating. And
Why do we need to talk about it?
I didn't know that he thought we were dating. So began our 10-year history. We actually dated and broke up 3 times. We had 3 breakups, and the last one was 2.5 years. And I will say, we'll kind of cover a little more of some of the ins and outs of that in a minute, but the last breakup was 7 years into our relationship, and I thought it was the end. We were done. I closed the door. I asked the Lord to take away all hope for the future. My heart could not take it anymore. So we were done as far as I knew, and I had to move on. So 2.5 years later, I was leading worship at a girls' event. Jeff was leading worship at another event, and we both had our bands, and we were actually both landed in Tulsa, Oklahoma on the same weekend. And
Oh, God.
sometimes he does these things. So we were both in Tulsa at the same time, and our bands kind of all knew each other and kind of got us together at this lunch place that weekend, and we hung out, with our bands, and that kind of set this thing in motion, unbeknownst to me, where Jeff would come to me the following week and ask if he could talk, and basically came and said, would you let me re-enter your life with the intention of pursuing you for marriage? And I was completely caught off guard, but saw the Lord had done a truly miraculous work in him. He was a different person altogether, and
Guys? Thanks, dude.
cool, okay, yeah, so that was good, and we, and I sensed the Lord calling me back into it, and so we, then, that was in March of 2010, we got back together, and got engaged in September, and got married in November, and all in that same year. So by that point, we figured we knew each other, and sped it up. But that is the brief story of Jeff and Jordan.
Awesome. Yeah. That covers all of it, right?
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, that was a decade and 3 minutes. That's pretty
That was
impressive.
impressive.
Yeah,
Well
there's
done.
a lot to ground.
That was
cover
great.
there.
Okay, well, you want to take ours?
Sure. Well, so we were both post-college, and I was working at a church in the Woodlands, and I had a band. Yes, Woodlands is great. And I had a band, and Ben was working as a youth pastor at a church that was in Spring, Texas, which is a little closer, kind of close to the Woodlands. And I remember actually standing on stage and tuning my guitar, because the band, we were getting ready for that night of worship. It was at a thing called Fresh Vibe, which is it's a great name. It was on a Tuesday night, so it was kind of cool. Maybe, yeah. So anyway, so I'm tuning my guitar, and this guy walks in the room with the person who had hired us to do the band for that night to lead worship, and I see Ben walk around the back of the room, and I'm tuning my guitar, and I just went... And my electric guitarist was like, what was that? And I was like, well, nothing, shut up. And and so I was like, immediately, I mean, look at this specimen.
Yeah, I do that. I know. It's a
How could anybody deny
stewardship.
it?
It's a stewardship that I carry.
It's a Stuart ship.
Wow.
All right, we get it.
Okay, yes. So anyway, so needless to say, I was attracted and wanted to know what this guy was doing in the room. And then he spoke. He taught that night. And I was like, it was on Genesis 1:1, which I'd probably read a lot. And I had never heard the way that it was taught that night. And so I was super intrigued that this good-looking preacher was even single. And so I was very, very excited about that. Wow. Okay, so we start meeting again in the same room once a month at the same event, and he was teaching and my band was doing the worship. And afterwards, we'd go hang out as friends with a group of people. So all of our friends kind of knew each other, but we didn't really know each other. And then we started to get to know each other. And then it took, what would you say, like 3 months? About 3 months. Yes. And then he asked if he could call me. And I said, sure. And so he did, and we went out on a date, and it was great. And then we went out on another date, and before that date, I felt the Holy Spirit saying, hey, you know what, you might want to give him this big out, because you have brought a lot into this world, and so what do you want to tell him about just kind of where you've been and what's been going on and where you are now? And I was like, I'm just going to tell him my testimony from when I got saved. And then I did, and he just was so great in that moment. He said, that is a beautiful story, and I would like to ask you out again. And so he did, and we kept dating publicly in IHOP. We dated at IHOP because it was
the only place open when I would fly into town.
Exactly. And
I had a little more game than just taking someone to an IHOP.
Well, no, he took me to a great place.
They have a great steak. Great steak at IHOP.
Right.
He was in ministry. He was on a tight budget.
We're good.
Okay.
I'm good. You're good. Go ahead.
We're good. And then we got married?
And then we got engaged, and then we got married.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No, we got engaged first, and then we got married.
Yeah,
yes.
we did. That's true.
So.
Okay, well, I feel great about that. We're crushing it.
Yeah, all right. Awesome.
Good? Okay.
I feel like everyone thinks you got to lead worship in order to get married now. It's all around worship.
Yeah, I want to see everyone's notes after this. Date for 10 years. No, not 10 years. Okay. IHOP. No, not IHOP. Okay. All right, well, let's get on to their questions, shall we? Okay.
Let's do it.
Question number 1, and again, we'll get to as many as we can, and then we'll do the rest maybe on the back end of this podcast. But the first one is, are there studies or resources a couple can go through together while they're dating? And is that a wise thing to do?
And we're going to let you take that one, since you read and I don't. You're smart. You go.
Define resources.
I would say, and you guys can amen me or not, but I would say, should you go through some Bible study together while you're dating? No, absolutely not. I think it's, I think you let them have their devotional life and you have yours, because you don't know how long you'll be together, if you should be together, anything like that. So you just continue to pursue the Lord on your own track and then get to know each other. And so one thing Donna and I did was, she asked me books that meant a lot to me, that had shaped who I am. And I didn't know, she didn't tell me right away, she started reading some of them. And then I read a book that had meant a lot to her, and we could talk about those things, but it wasn't okay, let's sit down and go through this passage, because then it changes the dynamic to where I'm teaching you or you're teaching me. And it was just we don't need to do that. You should have your own dynamic experience with the Lord and then be able to share about that. And so if you want research on dating or how to live a good life as someone that could date in a healthy way, I would say study the book of Proverbs. I would say Elizabeth Elliot wrote some of the best stuff on being single and longing to be married out there. She's got Let Me Be a Woman is a great book. She's got, what's the other one? Passion and Purity is a great one. So I would say Proverbs and Elizabeth Elliot, but not together. Y'all just talk. Does that sound good? Did y'all?
I agree.
Yes, good. All right. Well, this is fun. I'll just keep answering them, and y'all just say no.
We're just your sidekicks.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just your yes men.
So number 2, how do the principles of dating you've talked about apply to long-distance relationships? So we've been talking a lot about dating. What about the people that don't live in the same city?
I think, let's see.
Something that I was going to say on
Yeah.
that. And not to cut you off.
No. Please take it.
Jordan and I, when we were dating, we were in completely different stages of life. Jordan was in college. I was already graduated, and so she's living in Florida. I'm in Dallas. So I think for me on that one, it's not so much the long distance for me is as if you're in 2 different stages of life, it's hard to sync up and be kind of maybe in the right moment, you know. So there was a moment that the Lord, our paths crossed, and we were ready for that. But in the long distance for us, we had 2. It was like we'd get on the phone and I'd be like, "What'd you do today?" She's like, "Well, I was studying for this test." "What'd you do today?" I was like, "Well, I was working in the corporate world at that time." So I was like, "Well, I mean, this is not. You don't really care about what I'm doing today." So it's kind of like trying to figure out how we would get on the same page and in the right time, you know. And it just felt a little off.
You were forcing it.
Yeah, we were like forcing this thing long distance just because we loved hanging out when we were together, but it was like we were trying to make it work. So I don't know, that's just for us.
I think too, the principles apply, and not to say that long distance is not okay at all, and sometimes it has to be that way. And I think sometimes, maybe even on a practical level, you can schedule dates on the phone, you know. So it's not something that invades your whole world where you never come out of your room because you're always on the phone, or you still need to be living your life, but you have to still carve out time as you would if you were in the same city. But I think the principles that, especially that Ben has talked about with your heart and your mind, are the same. Logistically, it just looks a little different.
And we had a season when we were dating where I think this distance helped. There was because it was a big key marker for us. I moved to a different city, and it was, will this thing sort of survive that? And we found out we could connect on the phone and enjoyed doing that, and then I would find times to fly down or drive down, or because it was close enough to do that. And so it was that. I tell people a lot, when you're not sure about a relationship, distance and time are often 2 things that really help you, because the further we got away and the more time it went, the more I wanted to be with her, not less, which was clarifying for me. But I would also say when we got together, I was from a different town. We had to be very clear about how we're going to structure that time, because I talked to so many couples who are like, well, he's rolling in from another town, so of course he'll just stay at our house, and he'll sleep on the couch though. And you're like, well, you're going to set yourself up for a lot of heartache and hurt if you do that. So that's where we ended up at IHOP all the time, because I would fly in late, or we had people that we needed to know where we were to take care of us, you know.
I agree.
Awesome, cool. That's all I was looking for. All right, man, we're just clipping along. I feel great about this.
Let's do this.
I feel positive about us. All right, number 3. What if one person in the relationship feels that they're ready to get engaged, but the other isn't sure? I'm sorry, I'm not. That's a serious question.
That is a serious question.
Yeah. So
I could speak to that.
Yeah.
I think. So that was serious. Come on. I remember there was a time where in our relationship where I was like, let's do this. I'm ready. And that was not, it's not that he wasn't interested in me or he didn't want to be with me. It's just that moving engagement is a big decision. Because the hope is it'll end in marriage, and it's closer than just dating to marriage. And so I think what was good for me in that time was I realized that if I had a problem with Ben in that, my problem really wasn't with Ben. It was with God. Because what I wanted was God to hurry up and just tell him. And so I needed to get right with the Lord in that. And we sang it tonight, trusting the Lord and knowing that faith is going to be required in any future step, and definitely engagement was a big part of that. And for me, I needed to go deeper with Jesus before I went deeper with Ben. And so, Psalm 45 basically is a picture of Jesus being our husband. And I needed to know I've already got a spouse in Jesus, and I don't need to move things forward with another, with Ben, if I've already got this relationship that it should be filling the need that I need filled. And so as I waited, I realized, okay, Ben loves Jesus. Ben has the Holy Spirit. Ben's pursuing the Lord. He's trusting the Lord. He is leading us in this. He's going to be the one that makes the right decision. And so if he's going to do those things, which I believe that he will, then I need to be okay to go, I trust that he's going to do that. And if I can trust him on this side of engagement, then I can trust him in engagement, and I can trust him in marriage. And so it just really does train your heart to trust the Lord and trust the Spirit in the person you're supposed to be with.
That's great. Yeah, I fully agree with that. And if there comes to a point where you have been waiting, and we can't tell you how long is too long to wait, or when that cutoff is. There's not a magic number, and that's where you have to continue to lean into the Lord, and He will tell you, He will show you that, and if it has to end, that because it's been too long, then God is sovereign and He's trustworthy and He will take care of you, and but it's a full pressing into the Lord for wisdom and guidance in that. And believing He will make it clear.
In that, I just want to say, I think, so for us, I don't know what year it was, round 1, 2, or 3, that it was, I felt like in our relationship, so much of our dating, I felt like Jordan was like pushing me and feeling like I was like, she just wants to get engaged. Like, why can't we just hang out and be friends? Like, why are we pushing this? Like, we'll get married later, right? The thing that I didn't think about, and Donna mentioned it, was like, it wasn't a problem with Jordan. It was more of a problem with me on being intentional. So, I'm not trying to throw out a buzzword, but I literally was into just hanging out and having a great time. And I would just encourage you, if when you're in the relationship, the way that we saw it working was when you were really thinking about why you're in the relationship, where's this going, thinking about the way you structure your time together, thinking about the way that you're thinking of each other. And I never stopped to think, really sit down and think through with Jordan, like, what's that look like to get married and do the hard work? It was a lot of like fun and like discussion about maybe that'll happen. But until I sat down and I really did the hard work, not so much with just Jordan and I in our relationship, but the hard work of me with the Lord, sitting with the Lord and really working on all the deep issues that I had bottled up for years. That's the only way that I got to a good place where I could look at her and go, you know what, I'm ready. And I'm feeling really great about that because I feel right with the Lord. I'm not doing these things to please you. I'm doing those things whether you're in my life or not. I'm doing those things to please God. And so when I got to that place, then I could look at her and say, and I want you to be in that. And I want that for the long term. And I'm ready to get engaged now. And that was a shifting point for me of thinking that it was all about this, nagging woman on me again. Like, and then it was like, no, that's not true.
Was it really that bad?
No.
I have different recollections.
Okay, well, it was not that bad at all. But I just needed to do the work. I needed to do the work is my point.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Do the work, guys.
Well, I think you're bringing up a good point because I think sometimes what we can do, and we can do it in a lot of realms, is we go, man, I really want God to do this, and if God's moving, He'll do it like this. And we start to set a plan where we go, hey, God, here's a great way to work this out. And He's going to detonate it. And then you're going to go, what's your deal? And be mad at Him. And you're like, He wasn't asking you. Like, you don't get to run things. And you don't know what else is happening in the frame at all that He might want to do. And so often we want everything to just sail along fine, but think about your life, it tends to move like this, and it looks smooth in retrospect, but not while you're in it. And so you'd love that both of you realize it together and then fly together into, but it doesn't work that way. And I think for me, and it sounded like for you too, Jeff, that moving closer and thinking about the responsibility of loving somebody brought up issues that, for me, that I had never resolved from my past, that I could roll on in life and never have to address.
Yeah.
And so for me, I realized I have some serious trust issues that I think stem from coming from a divorced home and things like that, that for me, I didn't have to process those to be a good youth pastor. I could just go. But thinking about the emotional vulnerability of a marriage, she was in a place where she was ready, and I realized I'm like doing this and jumping, and I was like, yeah, that was our dating relationship. Like, it was a lot of like me suddenly freaking out, and like she read me one of the notes I wrote her, and I'm like, that is like the worst. I'm like, this guy is so sad. I'm like, God, because I was conflicted, and I think what both of you ladies were saying was wise. No one wins if you're trying to like arm wrestle someone into marriage. Like, that's a bad deal. Yeah. You want both people to go, we see God in this. And if you think it's the right person, but it's the wrong time, it's the wrong thing. Yeah. So you wait. And Psalm 118, it's better to trust in the Lord than to trust in man. It's better to trust in the Lord than to trust in princes. So if you're trying to play the game with men and princes to move the pieces to get what you want, you be careful. I think you got to trust the Lord. And like Donna was saying, you lay it down and say, he may give this person to me, he may not.
And if the Spirit's in it, you're not more sovereign than the Spirit to bust it up. You know, I mean, case in point, 10 years. I mean, with an on and off, and so you just have to trust the Holy Spirit that is sealed on your partner's, heart, on your engaged person's heart. But because if you try to rush the Spirit, you're just going to be frustrated. But if you rest in His goodness and that He's going to guide you, you're not going to break it. So.
I keep laughing because I just have Rob Bass's "It Takes Two to Make a Thing Go Right" in my head, because it does.
No, I just want you to sing.
That's the simplest answer to this question. I am not going to sing Rob Bass, but it does take two to make a thing go right. Okay, number 4. This one's good. How do you interact? And y'all can answer this one. How do you interact with someone after you've broken up?
Man.
Lots of ways.
We have all
tried
kinds
them all.
of examples. Yeah. Well, do you want the way that works? So I know you have a lot of good stuff to say on this, but I had to learn. I really thought that when we broke up the first time, and we were like, well, just be friends still. And so we still hung out. We still, she went back to, I was in Dallas, she was in Florida, and we just talked all the time on the phone. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Like I still have my best friend to call and talk to. And that is not the right way to do it, I will say. What it did is it caused a lot of confusion. It caused continuing to be friends. I get asked from a lot of y'all when we hang out, that's a big question. Can we still be friends? And you can try it, but I guarantee one of you is going to start thinking a different way and go this way, and the other one's going to start thinking this way, and there's going to be a DTR that's going to come along the way. And that happened for us multiple times until we finally got wise and just said, when we broke up after 7 years, when we broke up, that third time, it was like, we are done. Like, we have to cut off all communication. We don't talk, we don't text, nothing. And we really did. For 2 years, we did not interact together. And that was difficult because even our friend group was the same, and so we were like trying to hang out, and our like church friends are like, oh, who do we go? Like, what do we do? Who do we go with? Like, which group do you choose? And it was weird, but we knew that for the better of us and what we needed to work out with the Lord, it was not good to involve each other in that. Jordan couldn't help me in that moment with the Lord, and I didn't need to help her pursue the Lord in that moment. We had to trust and walk away. And so that for me, I'm just a strong believer in that because that's what I saw work. So that's why I think that. But
yeah. And so in the beginning, our first breakup, there also was a completely different maturity level. And so I think as our maturity grew, and we saw the value of boundaries, our boundaries got stronger. And so, and I want to kind of tag on to this because I know a lot of people have even come to me for counsel when they've broken up, and see our story and see that we broke up and got back together and then broke up and ended up getting married, and find a lot of hope in that. And I understand it, and it makes perfect sense. But what I want you to hear me say is that when we broke up, we did cut off all communication. We cut ties, and just on logistical matters, we would still see each other, like running into each other at church or at birthday parties or whatever, and you can still be cordial and have conversations. And we would, and we were, thankfully, it was not ever awkward between us. I know that's not the case for everyone, but we were able to be friendly and then leave the party and go our separate ways, and that was that. So it's not like you have to cut your eyes away every time you are in the same room as someone, but we were not in communication. We were not keeping in touch. We weren't checking up on each other, and I would not ask his friends questions about him because I didn't need to let my mind go and wonder, well, what was he doing there? And I wonder who he saw there. And I would just go down a bad path fast. So I decided not to ask any questions because I realized that was better for my heart to move on. And so what I want you to hear me say as far as breaking up and getting back together, when we broke up that last time, we broke up for good. In my mind, in my heart, I closed the door to that relationship because I knew my heart could not take it anymore, and I knew the Lord was saying no, that it was not time, and so I moved on with my life, period. And I sought healing from the Lord. I invested in my friends. I just moved on. I dated someone else. For all intents and purposes, we were finished, and I didn't know we were going to get back together. I can tell you as honestly as I can, I didn't think we would get back together. And I prayed often that my hope would die for that, so that my heart could move on and I could, live my life. Yeah. And I told Donna during that time, when she asked me at one point, do you think you could ever get back together with Jeff? And I said, as truthfully and non-dramatic as possible, it would take a miracle. And that was what I believed. So when Jeff came to me, after we had been broken up for 2.5 years, and asked to enter my life again, and asked if I would give him another chance, I was completely caught off guard. But he was, the Jeff that we broke up 2.5 years before did not come to me 2.5 years later. A brand new Jeff that had been completely transformed by the Lord and came to me that day. And I could see it in his countenance. He was different. He spoke differently. He had a different vocabulary. People that had been...
Hello, Jordan.
He got smart. No, that is not what I mean. You could tell he had different priorities because he spoke about things differently. And then I found out, people that had been walking with him, Ben and Donna included, would attest to this person that was changed and the work that he had done and how he had been seeking the Lord. And so when you hear our story, if you are in a breakup position right now and you're hoping that you guys can get back together, and you look at us and think, oh, maybe we could be like them, know that it just has to be over. And God is sovereign. Yeah. So he is going to do what he's going to do. And he doesn't need me or Jeff or anybody to, just like Ben was saying, to calculate the parts, to give him a plan. He will do it. And also in that time, what was so key in realizing that he was a different person was that I had nothing to do with the transformation that took place in him. Mm-hmm. I didn't give him a list of things that you need to do if you ever want to get back together with me or anything like that. It was, and I had been that person previously. In our relationship, I tried to be his Holy Spirit and help him along and show him ways that he could do things that I thought were better. And I tried to force that, and it did not work, and it put pits in my stomach, and I was full of anxiety, and it was just, that is not the way that the Lord intended. So I became a more complete person in the Lord with myself and the Lord. He became a more complete person with himself and the Lord, completely apart from each other. And then the Lord decided that we would be better together, and so he brought us back together. We did not do anything to manipulate that. So I hope you hear me say that with love, that you just have to shut it down, end it, move forward with your life.
One thing on that too, one statement that I tell a lot of people is, you can't mess it up. The Lord is, if you believe that God is sovereign and that he will run your life, and then if you're in a point when you're breaking up with someone, I always say, if the Lord wants you together, it's not going to be over. But you've got to trust where you are right now with the facts that you know and walk away maybe, but then in the future, maybe he would bring you back together. But God is sovereign, and if you trust him in that, then you can walk away in confidence and have this firm stance as you exit that relationship and walk away feeling more confident of like, I'm trusting the Lord and walking with him, and he's got my life, and I'm not trying to create what it needs to be.
Yeah.
So
I think that's good. And what is it? Proverbs says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And that's what you're talking about. You're going to go through a heart sickness when you had all this hope because y'all were building something, and then you realize it's not the right thing. So you're having to let this thing called we die. And nothing likes to die, and it's hard. And so a lot of you have experienced that, and you're like, well, this feeling's so horrible. Maybe I can, in that romantic mind, I will run to them. And that's where you need some wise counsel in your life, some people that can say, hey, remember, this was not the best person. And so it helped me to think about that when I dated the wrong people in college, to go, there's going to be a part of me that is going to try to fix it, even though there's this other part of me that knows we weren't a fit. And I have to tell that voice no, and I have to let this thing die. And it will die. It will go away. This feeling, and life will roll on. But again, a lot of that is predicated on, underneath it all, do you have a trust in God or not? Because if you do, you can walk out on those waters. If not, they're going to look way too scary. That's good. Well, all right. We're going to skip some of these. Here's what I want to talk about. Is it possible to make a dating relationship, this is number 7, Tyler. Is it possible to make a dating relationship healthy again after you've already crossed physical boundaries?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, you're looking for me on that one? Oh, okay, great. Let me answer that one quickly. I would say there is grace for everybody. And so what I found is whenever I talk about sex, you see a lot of shame hit people's lives, and they feel like, okay, there was this plan A that God has for the bright, shiny people, and I'm on his maybe plan B for the dirty ones among us, and this is always the best I will ever get in life, and they're sort of this doomed, oh, well, we already so. And that is just, none of that is true. Such were some of you, but you were washed, you were sanctified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. He makes all things new. That's our story. But let's say you're in a relationship where the two of you have crossed boundaries. Can you stay together? Let me say this really strongly. Not doing the same things you did before. And that's the tricky thing, is God will bring conviction about we need to change our intimate practices, how much we're making out, or our time on the couch. But if you just go, okay, we'll be different, and just try to muster your willpower, that willpower exits somewhere around midnight, 12:30. He doesn't care, and that other part of you will click on. And so you need if the two of you are going to make it, it's not by doing anything you've ever done before. You have to change everything, and you have to take a hard look at your life. Romans 13:14 says, make no provision for the flesh. And you have to go, where did we make provision? You know where we would always fail? Your apartment alone. Then we can never, ever, ever be in your apartment alone under any circumstances. Ever. Well, that's kind of inconvenient because you have a bigger TV. I don't care. It's not worth sitting over. It's over. And you have to be that hard on yourself. And that's your ability to go, okay, there's a part of me that I know is a twisted little weirdo, and I just need to tell that guy no, and not beat myself up like, what's wrong with me? Why am I go, no, there's a part of me that's attracted to you, and he's going to say crazy things around 1 a.m., and we're not going to listen to him, and we're not going to make provision for the flesh. And so that's where I think you have to be careful with that. Jude 22 says, have mercy on those who doubt, save others by snatching them out of the fire, but to others show mercy with fear, hating even the garment stained by flesh. And you go, what does that mean? Some of you are in a relationship with somebody that really doesn't have healthy sexual boundaries, and you're going to be in love with them and want to stay with them. And what Jude says is, show mercy with fear, hating even the garment stained by polluted flesh. You go, what do you mean by that? James has said there's going to be some people who are living a very polluted life sexually, and you're going to want to extend mercy. I forgive you, but you're going to want to be fearful, wise, of going, but we have demonstrably not made healthy decisions, so we need to be afraid of our ability to make wise decisions together. And the couples that I've seen make it, who had that kind of experience and move on, what they had to do was get some tough love around them, some people around who say, here's the boundaries, and you can't cross them. And so even for Donna and I, when we were farther along in dating, and like I said, I was flying in to meet with her, I would preach, on Monday nights, and then we would get in the car and drive, and we got to this time in our relationship where I'm like, the two of us are in the car late, and yeah, we would go to like IHOP, so it'd be public to visit, but we would still have like these long moments in the car, and we're like, we can't do this anymore. We can't have these long moments in the car anymore because we're really attracted to each other. It's really dark. No one knows where we are. And we got tonight, babe, and we just realized people need to know this. And so we would have to sabotage those moments of, hey, someone's waiting up for you at home and they're going to know and we're going to show up. And I mean, we would say that like, when the car stops, you're out, and literally it was like I'm turning into a werewolf or something. It's like, quick, run away! He's changing! We call later and go, God, that was close. Ooh, that was and you just know that. And
we had people. I mean, practically, we had people texting us at specific times. Hey, where are you? What are you doing? I call it "there is no tomorrow" syndrome. Like there is a tomorrow. Like you will have tomorrow to see each other. So stop saying there is no tomorrow at the car, and then you lean on the car for a while, and then you just spend more time at the car, and then you kiss, and then you spend more time at the car, and you're just like, this is not going anywhere good fast. Let's just let some people know, hey, we're out tonight. We're going here, we're going there. We're going to be home at whatever time, and that person is going to text us 10 minutes before that time and then on that time, and you have the decision in that moment to lie or not. And we didn't, and we had to put those boundaries in place, and they really served us well. So.
And it is nice to wake up in the morning with your integrity intact, because it gives you a sense of confidence, moral authority. And that's what I see in a lot of people, is they lose that sense of, I can control myself. Like 1 Thessalonians talks about, this is the will of God. You abstain from sexual immorality, that each of you possess his vessel with honor. And when you find in yourself the ability to do that, I can possess my life with honor, man, that gives you confidence. I can be a man of God. I can be a woman of God. We can be a couple of God. We can move. And you want those wins, but you're not going to get them alone. So I want to answer that question about wise counsel. Because some of you have said, okay, you keep saying get wise counsel around you. How do you identify wise counsel? You're like, well, my roommate, right? I mean, so like you're saying wise counsel. Who is that? How do I get that?
For For me, I think through our dating, I would attribute one dude who just he was actually in my band at that point. He was our guitar player. He was a married dude. He was a guy who asked me really hard questions. Like he actually asked me, where are you at with this, that, and he really dove in deeper than any guy had come into my life. And that for me was like the counsel that I needed. Like still to this day, I look back at our relationship and I go, we wouldn't be married if it wasn't for him talking with me and me actually being vulnerable enough to open up to him. Guys, I'm with you. It's hard when you mess up and when you feel like your past is dictating your future. I'm with you that it's super hard to go to another guy. Like I'm talking just to the guys now, but guys going to another guy and actually saying like, hey, this is true of where I'm at, and this is the way that my mind thinks, and it's super gross. Like none of us are good. So we've got to stop acting as if like saying that, but then getting together and saying, how are you doing? I'm doing good. Well, that doesn't do anything or it's not helpful. But you've got to find the one or two people that you can sit with, and when they say, how are you doing, you can actually say, here's what I struggled with this week, and don't just say struggled with what. Like, don't use the vague terms. Go deeper. Tell them where your mind is. Tell them how sick and perverted your head is, because that's all of us, and we need Jesus. And so go to those places and get the wise counsel, but people can't counsel you if you're not willing to go into it, to go deeper. So you can't come in and say, I'm struggling a little bit this week. How are you? I'm good. That doesn't get anything, and it's not going to be good in the long run. It doesn't take you deeper and help you work out your junk. Yeah. So for me, wise counsel came from my band member who did that with me and who was willing to spend the hard hours with me talking about where my head was.
Yeah, it's good.
I kept my wise counsel pretty tight, and one of the things I also learned in our long history was that early on, I told a lot of people what was going on, and I had a lot of voices speaking to me about what was best, or what they thought was best, and what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and that turned out to be pretty confusing and not helpful, and then I felt like I had to keep everybody up to date, and it just kind of became a mess. So I gradually learned to kind of funnel that down to a couple, and the Titus 2 talks about the ways that can look too, and talking about older women teaching the younger women, and I strongly suggest having an older person, someone who is farther along in their journey, maybe at stage of life, who has walked this road, is married, being one of those people for you, who can give you perspective based on experience. And also, and I do believe you can get wise counsel from people that are your peers, but I would also strongly suggest that that they not be a highly emotional person, and that they not be a person that is going to always be on your side. And you know who that is. You know who those people are, because it's not helpful ultimately. Sometimes we think we just need somebody to vent with, and just to call him out and just tell me, yeah, I can't believe you did that. That was awful. You need to run, blah, blah, blah. And that actually isn't very helpful, because it doesn't really leave you with anything other than anger and frustration. And that's not going to take you anywhere. So I think that was also helpful, was knowing like who's going to be able to listen to this in the most unemotional, non-biased way. And it's really hard with your friends, because they are going to be on your side and to be on your team and be rooting for you. But I think you will know who those people are.
And then also just be known by people, periods. They know how you're built, and they know what you're good at, and they know what you love, and that they can ask you the hard questions about the things, like not just purity, but just like, hey, how you doing with just the things that you love to do in Jesus' name? Like, to you two together, are you getting to do those things? Is he fanning that flame in you to be the best you can be in Jesus' name? And having those people asking those questions too, to see, like, is this thing that you're in, is this relationship that you're in, is this a better together thing? Because somebody might tell you, you know what, he doesn't make Jesus really shine out of you at all. In fact, I don't really know where you went. And so if you feel like you don't know who you are right now, And it's because you don't know where y'all are that you need to reevaluate that. So.
Yeah, and I would say this is where one of the reasons why, when you're single, pursuing devotion with the Lord is what? You're like, I am pursuing him in his word. I'm reading the word every day to shape me into the kind of person that could interact with someone in a healthy way, like you were later in life. And then you also go, and I'm getting involved in the church. I'm getting involved with people. So one of the benefits, Donna and I didn't meet till we were older. And one of the benefits of that was we were involved in a church where I suddenly had older friends. And so I do think you can have good encouragement from a roommate, from a peer. Paul talks about that to Timothy. Flee youthful lust, pursue righteousness, love, and peace along with those who call out to the Lord out of a pure heart. So he says, find those people that are calling out to the Lord out of a pure heart, that they want God, and you run with them. And particularly when you're in risky, dangerous places like the world of love and romance, where there's parts of my heart that are going to go crazy, that you go, I need those kind of people. So I was always looking in my life and going, I've got some buddies that I've known for life, and they're my good buds, but when it comes to pursuing the Lord, I don't know where they are. And there's these other guys that they are chasing the Lord, and I want to make sure they know what I'm doing. And then also, being involved at a church, what helped us was there were already these relationships that were older, that weren't as spun up and nuts about love. You must go to him. They were like, well, hang on. And they could sort of speak to us from a different place of wisdom, that they knew the Lord better and they knew us well. And so that's where, even now, that's one of the benefits of getting involved in a church, is you get those relationships. They're already there for you. And if you're like, well, it's too late, we're already dating, we don't know any wise people, oh no, then go to church, and get involved and join a small group and get to know some older people and let them get to know you, because you're never too far gone. Well, we need to wrap this up, but I want to answer one question and kind of land some things. One of the questions was, is it wrong to long to be married? And I would say absolutely not. 1 Corinthians 7 speaks to that if you're burning with a desire to get married, get married, He kind of says it in a way that's sort of like, if you're going to burn with lust, just get married. You're like, well, thanks, Paul. That feels real romantic. But, Proverbs 5 is a little sweeter about it. He's like, let your fountain be blessed. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. I mean, this is the word of God, where God's saying, I want you to have a wife that you rejoice in. I want you to have a marriage that's like a spring for you. I mean, that is just really a source of life. So at the bottom of this all, and we've said it a couple times and I want to circle back to it, is you have to ask the deeper question, do I trust God or not? Do I think he's strong enough to guide my future? Do I think he's loving enough to take care of me, or do I think he's cruel? And that's what this is going to keep coming back to for many of us, because for maybe most of you in here, you don't know who that person is. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know how long he's going to make you wait. So you go, well, then what can I know? There's all kinds of unrevealed will. He's not going to tell you. But what you can know is him. And it is better to trust in the Lord than to trust in men. It is better to trust in the Lord than to trust in princes. Who has ascended and come down? Only one, Jesus Christ. And then you go, then I may not know all things, but I can know him. And he's a good shepherd, and he will lead me. So I'm going to step out on these uncertain waters with my eyes fixed on him, believing that he's going to take care of me. He's not cruel. And he's going to do what's best for me, even when I don't understand. And that's the good news about the gospel of Jesus Christ, is we're not giving you a list of rules you're supposed to follow to make God like you. What God has given us is a man, a person, and you can trust him. And so what I would encourage you to do is, if your heart is conflicted a lot about love and dating and romance, don't keep focusing on love and dating and romance so much if it's stirring up crazy in you. Lift your eyes and fix your gaze on him, because when you see him, there's a stability there. I can trust God. And by the time I met Donna, yeah, there was a part of me that wanted to be married, but I'm like, but I know the part that's most certain is I'll follow him. And I don't know what he's going to do here. I don't know what he's going to do with me, but I know him, and I'm walking with him. And if he leads us together through wise counsel, through our own sense of are we a fit, then I trust him. And that's what you want. And so my hope is, if you don't know Jesus Christ, He is our message. He is our hope. He is our cause. He is our hero. He is our husband. He is our friend. He's the forgiver of your sin that will wash you clean. He's the lover of your soul that cares about you deeper than any man or any woman could. He's the hero of the human story, the Son of God who came to live and die and live again for you. And so my hope is you will read your Bible. You'll get to know him. Some of the best things I did when I was single is I wrote out books of the Bible. Because as I did that, I just got to know and trust him. And then when he led us together, I could say, the hand of our good Lord has led us thus far. And I want that for you. So my hope is before you get together with a guy or a girl, you'll get together with the Lord Jesus Christ, that you'll trust him with your whole life. And then if you know him, you'll press into him through his word, through his community, and walk with him for a lifetime. So that's our hope for you. And we're grateful we got to share this time with you. So thank you guys so much. Well, howdy. Welcome to the Breakaway podcast. We are sitting here in Reed Arena after our Q&A on stage, and I thought that was a lot of fun. I feel really good about that.
It was awesome.
To be clear, I'm sitting here with my wife, Donna, and with Jeff. Jordan had to step out, take care of some munchkins. But you got three.
That's right.
You got three of the four.
That's right.
To answer.
I know everything she'd say. I'm good. I got this.
Yeah.
She wants to tell y'all how awesome I am and all these things, so I'll just fill in the blanks.
You guys are one.
Yeah.
Just one.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I that was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed doing that.
I did too.
Yeah,
It was a lot of
and
fun.
we were talking about it. I just like, Jeff, that they got to see you and Jordan's personality, and on top of hearing, I think, some really helpful counsel from everybody. I just think it's always good to see y'all's relationship, to see more of ours,
Right.
to hear the perspective of our wives. I thought was really awesome.
And it's cool that we've known each other so long, that y'all have walked through our journey with us, and like there was just a lot of history there too. I think that was pretty awesome to get to do that together.
Oh, man.
So
Yeah, it was cool to just kind of watch that miracle happen.
yeah.
Seriously.
And it
Of
was
their
a miracle.
relationship,
Of their
not the
relationship,
miracle that we
not
survived the Q&A.
The miracle of what happened in Reed.
Miracle.
And
We did it.
yes,
Well,
Jordan does think I'm a miracle. She can't be here to tell you that, but yes, she does think I'm a
Take
miracle.
Right.
Okay. Well, I told Peter afterwards, I was like, I feel like my job was to herd all the artists on stage and like,
Yeah.
come on, guys.
Totally.
Come on, let's move towards the...
Yeah, I just had to keep
So-
reining it back because I could have gone a
gosh.
lot.
So
Yeah,
good.
anyway.
Well, okay, so there's obviously a lot more we could talk about, but I think there's four that would really help us, and we can jump through them fairly quickly here, so it's not a whole other talk. But one of them was, about, we presented singleness as being a time to secure a devotion to the Lord. What does that look like? And I thought, Jeff, there was a lot mentioned tonight about you and Jordan took a break because there just wasn't the health in y'all's relationship.
Yeah.
But 2.5 years later, you emerged a more healthy, intentional, purposeful man, and maybe help them with what were you doing that helped you?
Yeah, for those 2 years.
Yeah.
Those 2 years, the main thing that really, I would say, I actually went to counseling in those 2 years. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of counseling. I think that counseling helps. When I first heard the word counseling, I thought, oh, that's like for really messed up people. And then I realized I was really messed up. So I was like, oh, okay, I need that. And I always tell people now, I'm like the biggest advocate of counseling.
Yeah.
It's so great to get someone else's perspective in your life to help you work on your sin and the things of your past. And so for me, those 2 years was a lot of counseling with a Christian counselor who offered a lot of Christian biblical principles, and that was great. Mm-hmm. The other thing I mentioned tonight a little bit, but just having friendships, that was my first time in my life that friendships of guys, of a few close guys that knew everything about me with nothing hidden. Mm-hmm. And then I actually spoke what was happening inside of my head instead of just trying to speak in vague terms and actually dealing with all my junk. Mm-hmm. So I would say, with counseling, with the close friendships, and then like I said, I think the third thing of that season was realizing that I don't need to make all of my life look good for Jordan. Like I didn't need to like get everything right to like please her,
Right.
but I needed to be right with the Lord. I needed to be in a place that no matter, even if Jordan and I were married or not, that I was in it to please the Lord.
That's right.
And that was my first desire. And then Jordan would see like, okay, like she can trust me because I'm walking with the Lord and because like my desire is in him, not her, because people fail us. Mm-hmm. And so I would fail her, she would fail me if I was looking to her to fulfill or just to, with that trust. So I'd say those are like the three main things that come to mind.
Yeah. I think that's great, man. And I think it's in that word devotion. Singleness is to secure an undistracted devotion to the Lord. Like if I said, man, that guy's really devoted to playing guitar or really devoted to his dog. Like, what would that bring up in your mind? You go, well, he's prioritizing time with that thing. He wants to develop his knowledge of it, his experience of it. Like that's what devotion is. And I do think when someone comes to know Christ, Paul says that our life is a running after him is the picture in Philippians. Yep. Devotion to him is what he gave the Corinthians. You go, man, I'm about him. And what that means is you go, man, there's things in my life that have nothing to do with honoring Christ, and those need to change. Mm-hmm. And I want to put some things in my life that do have to do with honoring Christ. And so you go, how do I know which ones to do? Well, I would say get around people that know Christ really well. So get involved in a church. And then I would say read the Word of God. And what I tell young people all the time is excel at the revealed things. Mm-hmm. Just become great at what's revealed, because I want to know the will of God. You're like, well, he's told you a lot. So he says, practice hospitality. And you go, do I ever do that? Do I ever make people feel welcome? Mm-hmm. No, I can't think of one time I've gone out of my way to make someone feel welcome in my group of friends. Well, I need to change that. And what's happening? You're becoming the kind of person that would be a good husband. Mm-hmm. You're not doing it to be a good husband. You're doing it because it's a devotion to the Lord, and he's telling you that. Practice hospitality. He's telling you, do the work of an evangelist. What does that mean? It means having a passion for people who are lost and telling them about the hope that you found. And so I think as you read the Word of God, you start to go, oh, am I doing that? Do I believe that? Mm-hmm. And God will shape you into a husband like Christ, a wife like the church. So excel at the revealed things in his Word is what I would drill home to you as well.
One other thing that when we're talking about that, just to be clear, for me, I just want to make sure you hear that it's, I went through counseling. I worked out my stuff with some close guys. It didn't get me to a place where I was not struggling with that stuff when we got married. Like there was still a struggle, there's still a battle, and I think that'll last for my entire life. Mm-hmm. But I learned how to walk with the Lord. I learned how to walk with the Lord and be, and for him to be enough. And for him, just learning that. And then when I walked into marriage, it was like I still kept those. I still went to counseling. It wasn't like I just got enough together to be able to walk down an aisle. Like, no, like I still had to work on counseling and work with my guys, and I still do, and still have to figure out and have those hard moments of confessing things. And so.
Well, and I think that's a part of Christian maturity is going, I am grieved by the sin I see in my life and the sin principle that desires in it, but I'm not shocked by it anymore. Mm-hmm. And so when I hear that voice of temptation in me, I don't heap shame upon myself. Right. I go, I know where that's coming from, and I know where that leads me. I don't want to live there anymore.
That's right.
So I'm going to change. And change means I turn all the lights on. There are people that know everything about me. And I make some decisions that are contrary to that voice that I know is not healthy in me. And that's everybody's spiritual walk. And for a lot of us, like I said, when I got out of college, I went to a church where everyone went to counseling. It was just expected of the staff. Mm-hmm. And it shocked me how resistant I was to it. And then I realized, I'm like, why would I not let someone who loves God and knows a lot about the human emotional state not help me navigate those waters? Yep. And so that was helpful for me as well, and I think that's great advice.
Well, and I'd like to say too, just to step on that as well. Whenever we were dating, I felt like I wasn't done. I was finding some things in me kind of come up that I'm like, oh wait, these are some tendencies that I have, and so I actually thought the best thing to do was to step into counseling, and so I went into counseling for 10 weeks while we were dating in 2003, and so and in that time it was so good because the devotion that I had been practicing while single didn't need to stop once I started dating Ben. It needed to actually become more devoted to the Lord, or I was going to put Ben in a spot he never needed to be in.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, that's good.
And so I went into counseling just to figure out, why did I make decisions that I did, and why am I making decisions that I am right now in the way that I'm seeing Ben in my life? And I realized that I had some things that I needed to deal with the men who had been in my life, like dads and past boyfriends and such. And so I needed to go to the depths of who I am in Christ and who He is, and really seek harder after Jesus than Ben. And it wasn't to win Ben over by any means. It was just so I could be the best woman of Christ, best daughter of the King I could be.
Yeah.
And that's maybe hope for some of you that maybe your dating life in college has just been crashing and burning, and the good news you can do is look back and go, what did that reveal to me about myself that needs to change? And let breakups be a catalyst for healthy change in your life. That's one of the best things you can do. Is often dating will expose some things in you don't like, and you have the power to change those.
Yeah.
So that's good. Okay, the second question is, more broadly, not about dating so much, but just in life, how much communication is acceptable between genders? Is it wrong or leading someone on to text them or talk with someone with no intention of dating them? I would say this. I think it's healthy to have relationships across gender lines in groups. But when you start talking about pairing off, just two of us pairing off, that's a natural flow in the human story towards marriage. And so if you are trying to create this, we have this group of friends, but there's this one girl that I want to keep developing in more of like a secret world, or like we have our way of joking, or I process all my stuff with her. Or if you're a girl and go, well, me and this guy, I would say pairing off is natural romantically. And if you're not wanting to romantically pair off, I wouldn't expedite pairing off with someone of the opposite gender. Right. So, and I would also add to that, friendship is by its very nature not possessive.
Yeah.
Healthy friendship invites other friends. If I'm friends with you, then I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, I got to introduce you to this guy. You'll love him. And
right.
That doesn't threaten our friendship. It increases it. Oh, look, now there's more friends.
Yep.
So if you're like, well, me and this guy are, if you're a girl and me and this guy are really close friends, but if he started dating somebody, I'd be like really mad.
Devastated.
Or I would be jealous. Or then you go, okay, then see, y'all aren't friends.
Yeah.
You're doing something.
Yeah.
And you need to not expedite what you're doing. So.
Well, and another thing too, like if you're texting somebody and your like hope is to get like a funny text back, or to kind of go to the depths of your soul with someone, and you're realizing, oh, I really like this and I really want this, but I don't want to go into relationship with this person beyond these texts. I would ask yourself, are you being selfish? Because that sounds like a really selfish thing to do. Because if you don't want to go there with that person, then what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think the book of Proverbs helps you, because there's not like a hard and fast rule. It's called prudence, is what the book of Proverbs will call it. It's a facet of wisdom, of knowing, is this the best decision given this environment?
Right.
And you might look at someone and go, this wouldn't be the most prudent thing to do, to keep texting this person, because I might be toying with their emotions or toying with mine.
Right.
And so I shouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my advice.
And guaranteed, if a guy or girl hanging out, somebody starts thinking something.
Yeah.
I mean you can act like it's not there, but somebody's going down a different path in their mind, or thinking that way. So it's just, that's very normal.
Well, let's move on to the next one. Is it wrong for couples to date for several years, knowing that they're not ready to get married until they're older or finished with school, etc.? So maybe you came to college, you were dating in high school, you date for 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I mean, are you acting like a married couple? I mean, if you're acting like a married couple already before being married, I think you're kind of missing out on the ability to kind of figure out who you are outside of someone else. Now, if you feel like this is the person, and then I think, seek the Lord together and chase after Him, and God's going to reveal. But I don't know. I just think if it's like forever and you don't really know who you are outside of that person, that seems.
And I always tell like the guys that I meet with when they're like, "Hey, I'm dating this girl, but I don't see us getting married. Like I don't see us getting married in in the next 4 years while we're in college." Or like it's just kind of like I'm not saying it's wrong, no. But I always push them to say, then what are you doing? Like, are you planning on just like, what is dating then? Like, if dating is not moving to something, then why do it? Like, right. You would have much more fun in college, hanging out with all your friends and not going through the turmoil, because a relationship is a lot of work. Yeah. You're adding a whole nother stress to your life that doesn't even need to be there if you're not planning on moving that direction, and that's not the end goal for you. So if you're just kind of like, we're just dating, but maybe we might get married, but there's no way we're getting married in 4 or 5 years. I'm like, I always go, then trust the Lord and walk away from it. And again, like if you trust Him in 4 or 5 years, if maybe you'll come back together and get married, but you don't need to bring that into your life at this point. What's the purpose? Like, right. That's the main thing. It's like, what is the purpose of your dating if you're not moving towards marriage? I don't understand why you would date then.
Well, and I think what we're coming around with this is, and you mentioned, Don, of like, are you acting married? What I saw in my experience in college often is a guy and girl that would say, well, we're dating. And so naturally what would happen is he would drastically limit his time with building friendships with other guys, or being involved in organizations.
Missing out on so much.
She wouldn't join. And so what happens is you miss out on things that help develop you as a person. Yeah. Because you go, well, no, we have to, because we, I guess, have to be together because we're dating. And you go, man, you've really missed opportunities, not just to grow as a human being, but to help other people grow, to serve other people, to be involved. And so where I see it go bad is when you start limiting growth opportunities for the two of you because you feel some necessity to spend every waking hour together. Yeah. Whereas for me, that's what I tell them is I say, are you planning on getting married in the next 6 months? And if their answer is no, then I say, then play it really loose. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you go, what do you mean by play it loose? I mean, don't try to go, so are you my girlfriend? Okay, well, then that means you can't really talk to these people, and that means every Friday night and Saturday night it's just with me. You go, that's you trying to tighten down my possession of you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, but you don't possess her, and you have no intention of possessing her as a wife for years and years. So loosen your grip. Say, hey, what are you passionate about? Yeah. Do you want to go do a mission trip? You should go. It's not like, well, I don't know if we're supposed to. Like, there's no, like if you want to go, go. Yeah. If you got an internship, go. And you grow as people. And like I said, if the attraction's there, talk to each other, be involved in each other's lives, but don't try to expedite this possession of one another if you're not planning on taking the freight of marriage. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the last question is, I love it. What if the family doesn't like the person you're dating? So, I want you to meet my parents. Pew.
Never mind. I don't want you to meet them.
What would happen if that was the case? Oh, gosh. I don't think that happened to any of us. They just loved us, right?
Oh, yeah. Jordan's family, loved me. They wanted me in their family so bad. I was like, stop. They just kept asking me to come in their family. Wait for Jordan to get there.
I would say you need to hear them out. Yeah. So if your parents don't like someone, you need to ask them what concerns you. And you need to really hear their heart underneath it. Because even if you disagree with their ultimate assessment, you should or shouldn't date that person, you need to hear what's underneath it, because it might be some legitimate concerns. Yeah. And an example would be, I mean, I've had couples come to me that are in college and they love each other, and so they go, well, we want to get married. And so I told my dad, and my dad flipped out and says, I can't get married until I graduate college, and he's not ready, but we want to get married anyway, and so we're thinking about doing it. And I go, stop for a minute and hear your dad's fear. A husband protects and provides for a wife.
Mm-hmm.
This guy can't provide for you.
Yeah.
You ask him, do you have a job? No. We'll say, okay, then you can't provide for her. So then you need to wait till you can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your dad's concern, is his fear is you're supposed to, according to Genesis, leave your father and mother. And what does that mean, leave? It means like there's this separation financially, living.
Mm-hmm.
There's a separation that happens. And if y'all aren't prepared for that, yeah, your dad's pumping the brakes, and he should, of going, get a degree so you can get a job. Your dad is concerned about your stability in the future.
Yeah.
And so I've had couples that I come to and I go, so what if you have to wait 2 years? That's not wrong for him to ask that.
Right.
You know? Now, on the flip side, you may have some parents that maybe they're not Christians, and you have a husband that's devoted to Christ or a boyfriend, and they find that obnoxious. Where you go, well, okay, let's get past that personality. Do you just kind of find him obnoxious? Mom, Dad, but do you see in him the character that he would care for me?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see in him the chemistry that he makes me happy?
Yeah, it's good.
Then could you bless that? And so that might not happen all in one conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually seen that happen with one of our former students. Her parents were not believers, and he was just a strong believer, and she became a believer later in life, and they dated in high school, and they dated well, and he was so chivalrous, and he was a godly man, and they saw her come alive with this guy, and so they couldn't quite attribute it to Christ, but they just were like, but he's a good guy, but we don't know. And then when they did get engaged, it was okay, because they walked with him for so many, I guess they dated for a couple years, and they just saw that this guy really loves our daughter, and he blesses her. He takes care of her as just a high school, college student. And so, yeah, we can get on board with that. And actually, it was a beautiful wedding, And so I think that if your parents aren't believers, and they don't know what to think about this guy, let God take care of that. Let God shine through your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, and just let the Lord run that.
Yeah, and in that, there's also a great way for you to show Christ to your parents in the way that you honor them, and letting that kind of play out, and showing how you trust the Lord in that moment. Because I've also known couples too that like they waited to get married because one of the parents wasn't on board with it, but they also let it play out in a way of, instead of just pushing on their parents, they kind of they had a lot of discussion, a lot of talks that are not fun, but that's part of a relationship. A relationship is not always fun. So that involves maybe your family, of trying to talk to them and but it's great to have those discussions and invite them in rather than push them out, so that the family can be more healthy in the long run. But
yeah, usually a parent dislikes them out of fear. And you go, what will allay fear often?
Yeah.
More information over time, and a sense that they value what you value.
Yeah.
So you go, okay, they're afraid of me. I'm a threat. What do they value? Can I come around and value that? They want her to have someone with a certain education level or whatever. And, and let me give them more information on me. Maybe this will take a few months where the trust builds. And I think if you can demonstrate the character to be patient and love them, that'll pay off for years and years and years into the relationship. But there may be situations where ultimately it doesn't work that way. Maybe they have a parent that's, there's a million caveats to how this goes. Of maybe their parent is in an extremely unhealthy place, and you go, we can't really be prisoner to this person's addiction, or maybe really, so you go, there's situations where you go, we may not get her blessing or his, and that's okay. But I think you need to look and go, I need to hear their issues. Are they deep issues of they're concerned about character or chemistry? I don't see them taking care of you, providing for you. Or is it just sort of a preference thing? Well, I thought you'd married someone taller or richer. You go, well, you know what? That's not really critical. And you let them get over it.
And try not to take offense to your parents' initial response to whoever you bring home. because you don't know what they're going to do. But if they have any sort of like, oh, it was nice to meet you, you know, like they're more than likely, hopefully, going to be so protective of you, and that should say love to you. That shouldn't say, oh, my parents are terrible, or they're no good, or they don't care about me. That's not what they're trying to do. They may not know how to do it, but they're not trying to hurt you.
I guarantee you, I'm going to hate Hannah and Sparrows.
That's what I was just thinking. I was like, whoever comes home with 8, I'm like, nope. Like, instantly, like, nope.
That guy's a class A moron.
Yeah. There's
give him
no
a
way I'm
chance.
passing her off to
Why?
you. Yes.
I hate him.
Yes.
And then over time, you go, I guess he's okay.
If he looks like Jesus, then maybe. But
Exactly. Like, he's going to have to do quite a bit more.
Yep.
Well, anyway, this was fun, man. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Yeah.
And hopefully this was helpful. And we've got a couple breakaways left. I'm excited about. We're gonna, like I said, sort of re-release the podcast on Ephesians 5, and really strongly say pick that up. Journey with us through Ephesians 5, the picture of marriage, and then next week we're going to talk about the pursuit of marriage. And I'm super excited about that. And we're going to roll on. We just got a few of these left, and I'm excited about what the Lord's going to do in our midst. So thank you, guys. We love you. See you next week.
Bye.
see ya.